All right, all right, all right. You guys are listening to The Rebel Mindset. This is Chris Falcon. It is Wednesday. What is it? The 17th, maybe?
The
Is it
18th.
It's the 18th. It is Wednesday, the 18th of July. It's beautiful outside. Okay, this is like the second or third beautiful day we've had in a row. We got to take advantage of that here in Chicago. I am fortunate enough to have an awesome guest and co-host with me here in the pod. Go to mediapods.com. I've got Illinois State Representative Laura Fine with me here. Laura, how are you?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I feel good. I'm happy that the weather's good and that, everything is just dandy in the state of Illinois and in our country and in the world because everything's perfect, right?
I don't even know where to go with that. So.
Right. Well, we'll navigate that later. But I am feeling good. I'm in good health and good spirits, and I'm happy that you're here with us in the pod.
Thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
So, we have spent some time together already. Most of that time, you've been sweating.
Yeah, very nervous.
Okay, very, very
you
nervous.
just make me so nervous.
Well, I have that effect on women sometimes. But, mainly because I was kicking your butt in the gym a little bit, a few times.
Yeah, you did.
Yes.
Yeah, you did. That's why I'm not coming back anymore.
Yeah, I know. I'm wondering about that. I told you that I was thinking about bringing the sled over to your office, and don't think that I'm kidding.
Oh,
I might surprise you one day.
I won't be there.
No, I'm going to make sure you
I'll be
are
hiding
there.
under my desk.
I'm going to make sure you're there because I've got people behind the scenes. I don't know if you know that. They're watching
They'd
you.
have to cross the street, though. They'd have to cross Chestnut to get from the gym to my office, and I don't think that sled's going to work.
That's true. That wouldn't be good. I don't think the village would like that too much. So, we were talking beforehand. You are a fascinating person to me, and I'm going to tell you why. I know, right?
Nobody's ever called me fascinating before, so I'm going to appreciate this.
Well, but I think you are fascinating because you have what I consider to be a big responsibility. You are a Illinois state representative, the 17th district.
Correct.
Okay, state representative, which maybe in your own words, let's take a minute. Like, what does that mean to someone that knows nothing about local and state and national? Like, what is a state representative?
That's a really good question, and there's a lot of different facets to the answer. But I think the simplest answer would be I'm the one who represents the concerns and ideas of the constituents of the people who live in the 17th District in Springfield. So whenever there is a proposed law, or if we're proposing a law, that we make sure our voices are heard in the decision and how that law is created.
To me, that's a massive responsibility.
I guess if I looked at it as how you're looking at it, I'd be intimidated and want to run away from it. But instead, I look at it as a privilege because I get to represent my neighbors, my friends. I mean, I grew up in this area. This is where I'm from.
Right.
And so I really feel like I have a pulse of our district. And I'm fortunate because I have a lot of very active constituents who let me know that, hey, this bill is coming up and this is how we feel about it. Or here's another idea for something that we think needs to change in the state. And so by working together with all these really amazing people who live in, and if you don't know what the 17th District covers, it starts in Northbrook and covers all or parts of Northbrook, Glenview, Skokie, Gulf, Evanston, Wilmette, and Morton Grove. So it's a very diverse area,
Wow.
And we have a lot of interests. And just like I said, I'm just honored to be able to do what I do.
Well, and you're doing it well, and like you say, it's a really diverse area with a lot of interests and a lot of concerns. But it is a big responsibility, certainly from people like me sitting in my seat. But the one thing that fascinates me about you is that you've not taken that responsibility or that, let's just call it a position of power or leadership, and it doesn't really impact like the Laura Fine that was walking around in the street. Like, you are so approachable. You are a person of the people, and you don't change, and you're consistent and authentic in who you bring to what you bring to the table, and that's just what I think is so fascinating. Sometimes, you promote somebody from bagger to ringing up the groceries, and they're lifting their nose in the air and giving you attitude, but you are just awesome.
Oh, it's because you've pushed me around in the gym too many times. No, but and it's in the same thing that you do as well. I mean, for example, when I first walked into the gym and you trained me for the first time, I was completely intimidated. You made me feel comfortable. You made me feel like even though I knew I was probably the weakest person that ever walked in, that I could do it. And there's a lot to be said about being someone who encourages others. Because if you're the one who helps boost somebody else up, that's important.
So important.
It's better outcomes for everybody.
Totally, totally. I mean, I want to get into that too, which is, I think that that's such a huge part of leadership, is that encouragement and honestly that how it is that you connect with people, and how people respond to you. So I think that's huge. But I want to get into a little bit of your backstory a little bit. Because one thing that I want, people to take from this is that being in a position to represent the concerns of the people shouldn't be, and I don't believe is, a position that is reserved for, the few. I mean, this can be something that other people can do. But let's find out a little bit about the path that you took. Was this type of civic leadership something that was always on your mind, or was Laura, is it Cowan?
Yes.
Or was Laura
Cowan,
was Laura Cowan back in the days in media? Did she think that was going to be the career path that was going to be for her forever? Where did all this come from?
It's a really good question. I mean, I'd always been active and involved. I mean, starting in high school with student council, and then when I went on to college, I was able to get involved in something called union board. So I've always liked to be part of the process. But did I ever think I'd be in the position I'm in now? No. I mean, this was never on my radar screen. Like you said, I've worked about a dozen years in the media. And what I guess one of the greatest lessons I learned is you can't dig your heels in the ground about what you want to do with your future because you never know what your future is going to hold for you.
Totally.
You're a great example of that. How many different tangents have you taken, different forks in the road?
Yeah, that's the adult ADD, I think, or something like that. I don't know.
Maybe we all have a little bit of it. But you just have to see, maybe you start off doing something, but you kind of have to see what doors open for you and what life brings you. For me, I loved being in the media, and I really enjoyed political coverage. So I went back to school to get a master's in political science because I thought, well, that's really going to help me with political coverage. Lo and behold, I got an offer to teach in the political science department at Northeastern after I graduated. So I thought, well, let me give that a try. And I loved it. I taught for about 14 years there and was very happy and had my 2 little boys at home and got involved locally because I like doing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes.
Wow.
So you never know where that's going to take you. And so locally, working behind the scenes, I eventually got into a program called I Will, which is the Illinois Women's Institute for Leadership. And it was a program that started by Loretta Durbin, Dick Durbin's wife. And the goal was to train women, Democratic women, who might one day want to run for office. And by having this strong group of women behind me, it really gave me a lot of courage to be able to step up.
Wow.
And the first seat I stepped up for was clerk of Northfield Township, and was very happy being clerk and teaching, but a different door opened up.
A different door, and you were ready to walk right through it. What was your teaching style like? I'm just curious what it would have been like to sit in one of your seats in one of your classrooms.
What was my teaching style like? Very conversational.
Okay.
Every class I'd open up, because it was all study the Constitution and a study of politics. Every day we'd start the class out talking about what's going on in the real world and how does it relate to what we're doing in class. And for me, it was fascinating. Teaching at Northeastern, the diversity in the classroom is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
And just to get the feedback from these students was it was enlightening and just overwhelming to hear where their knowledge is coming from. And it's all from your experiences. So there was a lot of interaction in my classes. And,
Wow.
and I always told my kids, and I'll tell this to you and anybody who's listening, my goal was to make sure that by the end of the semester, if you were a citizen and eligible to vote, that you were registered to vote.
Oh, that's incredible. That's incredible. And I think that is, that's just so important, if there was anything that someone could get out of that, it was like, get out there and make sure that you exercise your right to be heard.
Absolutely.
And another thing just on your teaching style, I think that's just a better way for people to retain information is when you're conversing versus being talked at, you know what I mean, or spoken to. It's like, okay, let's get a dialogue going on here. Let's share ideas. Let's talk this out. And sometimes you feel like that's not really happening in our current political arena, if you will. I just don't feel like there's enough listening happening.
In many cases, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you hear more about the bad going on than the good going on, because there are a lot of people who are listening. I mean, one thing that I found fascinating was when I was first elected to office and I went down to Springfield, I thought, I know what's going on. I've been teaching this for 14 years now. And I got there and I'm like, oh my God, throw the books out the window. Because what matters is relationships and communication. Right. And if you don't have the listening going on, you're going to create problems for yourself. You're not going to be able to accomplish anything.
I couldn't agree more. So many people wait for their chance to speak versus listening. Mm-hmm. And I think that listening is an incredible art and skill to master. One thing that I wanted to ask you about was your family, because I know that part of the reason why you decided to run for office and really drive forward in what is it you're doing was because of some stuff happening at home. Yeah. And you've been really, I don't want to say a rebel, but
I like being called a rebel.
But maybe because you went in there and you were like, I'm going to reform this whole world of insurance. And so, but this really, the passion and the drive behind that started with what was happening at home.
Yeah. So we have a very unusual story, and everybody has a story. Everybody, sometime in their life, will go through a very difficult period. And that period shapes you when you come out on the other side. And it takes time, but everybody comes out on the other side. And it's a matter of what do you do with your knowledge. And so for me, my husband was on the show before, and I'm sure he shared the story that he was driving to work one day, and he was in a pretty devastating car accident. And not the funny part of this, but the ironic part of this was I was in a spin class that morning.
Oh, wow.
And I got a tap on my shoulder from someone at the front desk and said, you have an emergency phone call. So I assumed it was my youngest son saying he forgot his lunch, because how many times has that happened in your house?
Right, and exactly. That's what happens at that hour.
Exactly. And it said it was shocking for me because it was the chaplain at Lutheran General Hospital calling to say, your husband's been in a car accident. Take your time and come over here. It would not give me any information, so I had no idea what had happened.
Oh, my gosh.
But to make a long story short, and it is a long story, as he was driving to work, he was hit head-on by a truck, and it drove over his car and amputated his left arm at the scene. But there was a lot of good that happened as a result of that. There was a man following him who saw what happened, had people bring him rags and tree branches, made a tourniquet, and saved his life. And this man is now a part of our family. Kind of a rotten way to meet somebody you love, but at least we were able to meet him.
Yeah, thank goodness he was there.
Exactly. And just a wonderful family, and we're so glad to have them as part of our family now. But the lessons we learned were, unfortunately, and experiences so many other people have had, how the insurance system worked. And this was before the Affordable Care Act was put in place. So there were a lot of laws and regulations that no longer exist now. So, for example, the person who hit Michael had the lowest amount of auto insurance liability coverage that you needed to purchase in the state of Illinois, which was $20,000.
Okay.
He was in the hospital for 5 weeks and had 8 surgeries in the hospital and 2 later, and that didn't stretch very far. But we thought, okay, not a problem. He was self-employed at the time, so we had individual policies. And when we were in the hospital, we contacted the insurance company. They said, you're going to be getting a lot of bills. Just give us a call if you have any questions. So when he came home 5 weeks later, and we're trying to adjust to what is a new normal, and everybody has to adjust to that at some time in their life because things change. But we started getting all these unpaid bills. And so I contacted my contact at the insurance company to say, what's going on? Why are these not getting paid? And the response I got was, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you.
Oh, my.
So before the Affordable Care Act was put in place, what I did not know is if you had an individual policy, the insurance company had 2 years to rescind your policy if they could find reason. And so they searched for a reason to try to rescind the policy. So it really, the experience we had was devastating because you think you're doing everything right. My kids were young at the time. We were both working. We were both professionals. We were both educated, and we were both falling apart. I was trying to keep everybody together as my husband spun into a suicidal depression. And you feel like the rug has just been pulled out from under you.
Incredible.
So after 7 months of this, and we had an attorney who finally called the insurance company and said, this family's had enough. There's no reason to rescind. We're taking you to court. And their response was, oh, my goodness, we can't find reason to rescind. We're going to start paying those bills.
But only after they took you through hell.
Absolutely.
And you'd already been going through hell with the trauma, but then you've got all of these bills piling up. It's an incredible story. And if you guys want to hear more of Michael's story, you can listen to season 1, episode 1 of The Rebel Mindset, where he does share the details. And he's an incredible man. You married an incredible man.
I did.
But, you personally went through this experience, which lit a fire inside of you, which you essentially took into your role. And you have been, and you're the nicest woman in the world. Really, she is the nicest woman.
Chris.
But you have been nothing short of a pit bull when it comes to, with lockjaw and all, when it comes to how persistent.
Called a dog with a bone.
Right? With how persistent you have been in really trying to get in there and reform and make the entire insurance realm just better for the people. Do you think that that having a passion like that, having a reason, is something that can drive other people to want to get up and want to serve and want to kind of follow your path? Is that kind of what we need to do? Find something that strikes a chord with us and then try to get up and do something about it?
Absolutely. And you never know, because I never thought this was going to happen to me. I never thought I'd find insurance fascinating, but I absolutely do. And I think the most special part about being able to serve is when I first went to Springfield, and I knew I wanted to accomplish something, but when you're the new kid on the block, you really don't know how to go about it. And so first thing I did was got myself on the insurance committee. Second thing I did was find out how strong the insurance lobby is in Illinois. And then I tried to start working with them. And I was fortunate this year because I've been chairing the insurance committee in the House for the past 2 years, which has been something that I didn't, in my wildest dreams, I didn't think I'd be able to accomplish.
Wow.
And the
Congrats.
best, thank you. But the best part of that is people who've had experiences and consumers who've had bad experiences feel comfortable coming to me because they know I've been through it too, and we can work on things together. So a lot of the legislation that I've passed, it could come from you. You could, when I was working out with you in the gym, although, I wasn't really listening to you because the voices in my head, what I was saying about you weren't so friendly at the time.
Did you use profanity in your head?
I'm not saying.
Because I've never heard you use profanity in life, in real life.
That will always, what stays between my ears stays between my ears. But, you could say, I had somebody, a man come to me a couple of years ago and say, I have a son he's autistic. And at the time, he was 15 years old and 210 pounds. He said, I need to take him to the dentist, but I can't because the dental work costs less than sedation. I can't afford sedation. And in order to perform dental work on him safely, they have to put him in almost a straitjacket, and people have to sit on top of him. And what that does to the psyche of a child is, devastating. So we started working on legislation that says, well, if you have a child with a developmental disability, that sedation needs to be covered for dental treatment. And this was something that, when I first started working on it, the industry was completely opposed to. But we worked, and we were able to actually pass that law. And the hope is you see a lot of adults with developmental disabilities who have dental issues or health problems related to dental issues. And that's because they were never able to get the dental work that they needed as a child. So the hope is that more children will be able to get the dental work that they need because they're going to be able to go through it in a less traumatic way, and these families will be able to afford it.
Wow. I mean, it's like it's little details that like maybe if we were going to sit down and start to make a list of things you wouldn't really think about, but these little things, can this child with special needs get all of the things needed, the sedation, whatever it is, so that they can get their teeth taken care of? Like these little details are massively important and impactful in the lives and how we live our lives as families. You have to be like so sensitive and aware and keep your finger on the pulse of how we live, when it comes to addressing all of this stuff with insurance.
Well, and it depends on people like you to tell me, well, what's going on. So, for example, I passed a bill this year. I didn't know that hearing aids were not covered for children under their insurance policies. This bill is now on the governor's desk to have these hearing aids covered. But if these families didn't come to me, I would not have known it was an issue. So it's very important, like you said earlier, you got to speak up, because if we don't know, nothing's going to get done.
Get out there and speak up. People like Laura are here, like she said originally, to address your concerns. These concerns that you have are based on how it is that you are living your life. So get out there and contact people like Laura, wherever you are living, and let them know. Because again, it's a super important job. Because laws are passed that can change how we live, like on a daily basis.
You're making me nervous.
Huge.
I didn't realize all the responsibility
Do you know
I had.
what you do?
No. I have a question for you, because we talked about earlier the importance of registering to vote and going out to vote. Do you remember voting in your first election?
Oh my gosh, I think I do. But my life is like, it's kind of like one big single moment. So like sometimes the details get, but I remember what it felt like more than anything else. I remember what it felt like. And I felt like, well, first and foremost, I felt like when I was walking into the place to vote, I felt like they were going to think I was like a fraud, like you're not supposed to be here. So I was like, are they really going to let me in to actually do this? And then when I did, I felt like an adult. I feel like I felt like I contributed. I felt like they tell you that here you are, you're a citizen of the United States, but I didn't really feel like I was, handling or claiming any of my civic duty. And I was like, yeah, like I'm relevant now. I thought that was cool.
And what people don't realize is they're like, oh, it's just one vote. About maybe it was a year or two ago, there was a mayoral race in Mundelein. The race was decided by 3 votes.
Wow.
So every vote counts.
Absolutely.
So, and I used to tell my students, I'm like, it's your choice. You can go vote if you want to vote. You don't have to. But I'm going to vote. So my voice is going to be heard. If you don't agree with me, that's too bad. because I'm going to be heard.
Right.
If you want to be heard too, you've got to cast that ballot.
You know what, you do, and that's important. I mean, to voluntarily just stay silent on issues that are so relevant to your life doesn't make sense. What do you feel is kind of like the state of the union of, if you will, when it comes to young people in this country and voting and how maybe they feel about politics and these issues? Because one thing that I want to cover is I want to get your opinion on ultimately where we're going, with young people and the future of civic leadership and people stepping forward. Like, it doesn't really lie with you and I, and to a certain degree it does, but my kids, your kids, what's your opinion on young people right now? Do you think that these are people that aren't really fitting the stereotype of the lazy, entitled, or do you think there's more going on, more opportunity, more potential in these young kids?
I think this next generation is fabulous.
Do tell.
I will.
Tell me.
And I'm not just saying it because my kids are in this next generation, and I think they're fabulous.
But your kids are exceptional. But we won't go into that. But your kids are exceptional.
Oh, well, thank you. You just tell a mom that, and I just melt. But I've seen kids step up. What we're seeing now around gun safety issues, adults are finally listening because the teens are stepping up. And this is a generation that is so important because right now we're the leaders, but we're setting the stage for what they're coming into. So these kids have to speak up for what they want this stage to look like, and they are. I look at, right now, obviously it's campaign season. So I know on our campaign, we have maybe 30 interns this year who really want to just get involved and stand up and speak out and learn how to get involved in the process.
What's like motivating them? I mean, are these kids, do they come from political families, or what's their passion? What's their reason? Why do they want to? Because I know that, how old are these interns?
High school and college.
I can't even tell you what I was doing when I was in high school and college because, even though this is our podcast, we can say whatever we want. Doing something like that was not only the last thing on my mind, it wasn't even in the realm of something I could even understand. So where are these kids coming from? Literally.
And I've got to wonder too, is it social media? Because they're exposed to so much more. They know so much more about what's going on than we ever did.
Totally.
We could watch the news at night or read a newspaper, listen to the radio maybe. But we had to listen to music when we were listening to the radio when we were younger. So that just wasn't, the importance.
Right.
But I think our kids are so bombarded now with information that it's causing them anxiety and stress, that's for sure. But then we have this other group of kids that are saying, I don't like the way that's going. I'm going to see if I can start making changes, even at my age. And they are. They absolutely are.
Totally. It's never been easier to find something that you're passionate about than it is today, just due to the social media.
Absolutely. And I think that kids and teens need to know that their opinions are respected and that we're listening. In my job, I get to do some really kind of cool and fun things and meet a lot of people. And one of the greatest experiences I had was I had a third grader from a Glenview Public School contact me. This was a couple years ago. Wrote me a beautiful letter about how he had gone to a traveling circus and was so upset with the way elephants were being treated. And he did all this research on how elephants were being treated in traveling shows and said, I don't want to see elephants in traveling shows in Illinois anymore. So working with him, I reached out to the Humane Society, and it was a team effort. And, this third grader had an idea, and now it's the law in Illinois that you cannot use elephants in traveling shows throughout our state.
A third grader impacted the law, the law of the land.
Exactly. So kids need to know that we're listening to them. We might have different ideas, but they're going to come up with other ideas that we need to know about.
Now, one thing that I want to do is I want to be able, and I say this every show, to motivate and help people personally and professionally. Going back to your kids and what you just said, I mean, your kids, I firmly believe are exceptional. I mean, I see the things that your kids do, and I'm like,
what do you want, Chris? I'll give you anything. You want me to babysit?
Oh, she's literally oozing out of the chair right now. For those of you that are only listening, but really they are, and so I wonder, like, okay, tips for all the parents out there. What the hell did you do with your kids? I mean, they're like,
they're good kids.
They're doing crazy stuff. I don't want to say what they're doing. I mean, making prosthetics and like doing, like, you have incredible kids. They're incredibly well-mannered. They're focused. They're always smiling.
You've only seen them on the good days.
We all have bad days, but let us not be judged by our bad days. Let us be judged by our good days. What tips can you get as far as you're talking about, like making sure that the kids know that they can be heard, that we do respect them as individuals as well? How can we take that into the home? Because I think that so much of what we're going to be able to get out of our future leaders can stem from how it is that we are interacting with our kids at home. So what did you do? What the hell did you and Michael do?
We got lucky.
Don't say that, because people tell me that all the time. That's not helping me.
Yeah, I would never give anybody else parenting skills ideas, because I'm far from perfect, but I did get lucky. I have good kids. And I think part of it was the experience that we went through. Right. When it was a really bad experience, it could have gone either way. We could have all fallen off the ledge, or we could have pulled through it. And we were fortunate to have a strong enough family unit that we stayed together and we were each other's support. And and it took a long time. There was a lot to heal. But we took our lessons and turned them into something positive instead of something negative.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing. I mean, I personally believe that growth is not possible without struggle. And you guys literally, you persevered and you took on, I mean, I don't think you could have had a bigger struggle than what you guys went through as a family.
I think, everybody looks at everybody else's struggle as harder than their own. And you've gone through your own struggles.
I have. But I mean, you guys really did an incredible job rebounding from this. I mean, you didn't spend that much time on the floor. You did rebound. And I think that, with struggle, I mean, there's so many good things going on right now, but at the same time, there does seem to be a little bit of struggle happening right now in so many ways. Yeah. Politically and in our country. I mean, everyone knows that all the problems of the world are solved, in the gym, in the personal training studio, right?
Absolutely.
Everything is solved there. We cover it all. And so the things, in
those conversations, we really do solve the problems of the world.
We solve all the problems of the world. So the things that are being said in the gym right now and just, conversing casually with people, I mean, it's crazy, if you just want to keep your finger on the pulse, what people are saying and how they feel. I don't know your personal opinion, and I know that I think you're more of a half, a glass is half full versus half empty type of person. But at the same time, we do have some struggles right now.
Absolutely.
How do you see us growing from what we're going through right now as a people? What can we do to kind of gain control? And how can we get out there on Main Street and motivate people to rebound from whatever they think might not be right now? What do we got to do? What's the state of the union right now, and what do we got to do?
Right. And this is just the opinion of Laura, because there are some people out there who might be happy with the way things are going. I personally am not. And for, my future and for the future of my children, I feel like it's very important that people stand up and their voices are heard. Sometimes I talk to a lot of people and they'll hear something on the news and want to bury their head in the sand. I'm looking at this as this is now our opportunity. We have seen things turn back in some ways that we're not so happy with, and I'm definitely speaking for myself right now. So it's up to us to take the bull by the horns and make the changes. We've seen how if you are a bystander and not an upstander, things can be taken away from you. So now it's our opportunity to say that, okay, it's our time. We're going to really stand up, work together, plow through this, and make the changes that we want to see get done.
But what if, I'm a listener at home. I feel powerless. I don't understand what you mean. I feel like everything is just happening to me and all these decisions are simply being made for me. What am I supposed to really do in order to make any change or make anything happen or better for my life or for my surroundings? What am I supposed to do?
Get involved. And there are so many different ways. Any interest you have, you could go online and find a group to join. You've heard somebody say in the past that, you can be angry in your house and yell at your TV, but that's not going to get anything done.
You're damn right. You might start sweating. You might feel a little better for the moment, but it didn't do a damn thing.
Right. But what you'll find is there's a group of people out there who feel the exact same way as you do, and there's strength in numbers. So if you get involved in that group, and sometimes you might agree with them or disagree with them, but it could be an issue about the environment. It could be women's health issues. It could be immigration. There are so many issues out there right now. There's a group for you to get involved in, and that group is going to help you figure out, how do I, scream from, the street corner? How do I write my elected representatives? What phone calls do I make? Right now, it's an essential time because come November, we have an election coming up. And we can see a lot of changes happening at the federal level and at the state level. So now is a wonderful opportunity for you to turn your anger into optimism and work and get something done.
Oh, I love that. Turn your anger into optimism and action. Sometimes people think they need to change the world with their actions, where really all you need to do is change your world. Just change how it is that you are doing things. Get out there and get involved. Change your world, and then let's just see what happens. But if everyone got out there and simply just changed how they were doing things, don't be a bystander, be an upstander. Imagine what type of society we'd be living in and how many voices would be heard. As you say, there's power in numbers. I want to go back again to these young people a little bit because it's important to me. I've got two little boys, as you know, and
Cutest little boys.
Cutest little boys.
Who look so cute on Halloween in their football costumes.
Oh my gosh, no, they're super cute, but it's kind of like like the Gremlins. What was it like? Don't get them wet and don't feed them after midnight.
Okay, I have two boys. I totally get that.
You know what I'm talking about. They're super cute, but you get them into the right circumstances, and now they're like pulling the hood off your car and ripping the stuffing out of the cushions, and you're ready to run for the hills. But when it comes to these young people, in the future of civic leadership, you've got technology, social media. You have how quickly these movements can grow. Do you feel like, and now, and again, I'm not a super political person. I'm not sitting there constantly reading everything, but you're talking about elections being interfered with technology and social media. Like there's so much going on. Like, using your soothsayer, because I know you've got magic powers, you can see the future.
Not a problem. I wish I could.
If you're anything like my wife, you can see the future.
That child is going to do this next.
Right.
Boom.
Right. Yeah, she can see it. And she has eyes in the back of her head, of course. But how do you see this, just the whole landscape shifting? Is social media going to be a way bigger player? Like, are we going to, politically, are we going to vote different? Like, how do you see these trends shifting? Because the world is so different when it comes to this.
Absolutely. And I think with all your work you've done on cyberbullying, social media can be used in good ways and it can be used in bad ways. And that's really, how do we make sure it's being used for good? It could be used to intimidate people, or it could be used to encourage people. And, for me, in my age group, growing up, I didn't have social media. I'm going to age myself now. I didn't even type on my first computer until the end of my high school career.
Yeah.
So our kids have a lot more exposures than we've ever had. And so I think it's really going to be up to them to figure out what is the best way to use this, because we're seeing the bad. And how
Right.
do we just focus on the good?
Right.
And something somebody told me once, and this totally relates to your kids and the age group that they're in. My youngest son has always been a STEM kid. And somebody said to me, when he grows up and finds a career, whatever career he goes into, it hasn't been invented yet.
I love that.
So we don't know what the future holds, but we've got to make sure that we shape it in the proper way. And our kids have a huge role in that.
Do you think that the folks in Washington, after what we've seen here, with these young kids, and the anti-gun violence movement, they've done incredible things. These kids, do you think that they have to take this young generation more seriously?
Oh, I absolutely do. I think it would be a huge mistake not to listen to them.
Yeah.
In Illinois, we did. I mean, for the first time, we were able to pass gun safety legislation this session, and one of the bills was recently signed into law. And what this legislation says is if there is somebody in your home who has a weapon, a legal weapon, but you are concerned that they are a threat to themselves or to others, you could go to court and get a petition, and that weapon can be taken from your home.
Wow.
We need to do more. We're not doing enough to protect our kids. But I really think because these kids spoke up, those of us who have been vocal on these issues had a bigger group to work with. And by having these kids and their parents and the communities contact their representatives and let them know that this is important to our generation, and you need to do this for us, that we were able to get something done.
Some of these things seem like they're common sense. Like why wouldn't we want to have that? And I don't want to get, I'm not picking sides or anything, but sometimes these things really do seem like common sense. You said before, there's power in numbers. I mean, is it really that we just needed to get to this point? Did we really need this many shootings and this many kids and this many rallies to get people to want to do what appears to simply be common sense? What is kind of the hang up politically when it comes to getting traction for things that, I could ask my 6-year-old and he would say, yeah, this is the way it should be.
That's a really good question. One of the things that was a big wake-up call for me when I first went down to Springfield was how diverse the state of Illinois is. We live in a bubble up here, and things that totally make sense to us here are completely foreign in Southern Illinois. Just different concerns, different needs, different, urban versus rural. And so it's very difficult to create one law that everybody in the state of Illinois is going to be able to abide by.
Right.
And so that's part of the challenge that we face. For example, when I first went down and we were told by the courts that we had to pass concealed carry in Illinois, I can tell you the majority of the districts, in the people in my district here, were opposed to concealed carry. So we were, in what surprised me, part of the minority. This area, the city of Chicago, the northern suburbs, we were in opposition. The rest of the state was not. And so that was a big wake-up call for me. But when you say, it just makes sense, a lot of this just does make sense. But I think there's a lot of fear. And the fear is, if you pass this law, then what's coming next? And then what's coming after that? And for some reason, people live in fear. And they think, if you get even the tiniest piece done, then, my rights are going to be infringed upon.
Right.
But what about my rights?
Right. Me and a client of mine, we always say, the news, she comes in and she trains at 8 o'clock. And so maybe the news might be on while she warms up. And we'll always say, you know what? If all these decisions and all these laws, all this stuff that needed to be made, they just need to come to our desk. Me and her will be the committee, and we'll just be yay or nay on this.
We'd have a perfect world.
Yeah, perfect world, because it's we're looking at this, we're like, what? This is common sense. No, just bring it over here. We'll tell you what to do. There's no need to argue so much about it. But let's just be in la la land here for a minute. How do you think? What would be the most ideal way of handling, of operating, of making these decisions? Do you have well, really, this is how I'd love to see, laws passed and these decisions made? Or do you think what we have right now is the perfect animal for what we need, the perfect tool for the job?
No process is ever perfect. But when we look at what's happening in other forms of government, I'm sticking with our democracy and the way it works. Do I get upset at times because sometimes rules are changed to benefit one party or the other? Yeah, I don't think that's fair. But I really, it's now I'm putting on my political science hat because I taught it for so many years.
Put it on.
I'll put it on.
It's a good-looking hat.
But what most people don't realize is you need a majority of votes to pass something, but that means that the minority's voice is heard because the minority can kill a bill. And I think that's something that we don't always remember. Like, for example, in the Illinois House, in order to get a veto-proof majority on something, you need 71 of 118 people to agree on something.
Wow.
So it's those who disagree who can really be heard and make sure that something is not accomplished. And yeah, that's frustrating at times, but that just shows you in order to get something done, there really needs to be a compromise because, the original idea has to change so more people will jump on board with it.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I do think that with as many challenges as we have, I'm a patriot in a way. I mean, I do love this country, and I think that our process is a fantastic process. And I try to be fair, and I try to exercise my right to listen to other people, and voice my opinion when I feel that I can. And so I think we do have a system that's pretty fantastic, and I'm proud of that system. I think that, regardless of what maybe some people might think of the POTUS that we currently have right now, there are certain responsibilities that we have as leaders, I think, and it's tough to live up to that responsibility. I've sat down with somebody that I totally respect, the mayor of Morton Grove, Dan DiMaria. He's fantastic. And he told me, I don't remember exactly what it is, but I think he told me he gets $18.57 a day to be the mayor of Morton Grove,
sense, yeah.
right? $18.57 a day. Looking at him as a leader, I mean, this is obviously not something that he's doing for the money. He's doing this for the people.
Absolutely. And most people who go into public service go into it because they want to do better. You hear about the bad apples, but I got to tell you, there's a lot more good apples. But you don't hear about them because that's boring.
Right.
Oh, somebody's doing a good job. Who cares?
Right. Where's the scandal?
Exactly.
Come on, that's not exciting.
Exactly. So, so it takes a lot to step up and run for public office because you put yourself out there, you put your family out there, and now, especially with the spread of social media, it can be devastating at times.
Do you think that process is something that sometimes prevents really amazing candidates from stepping forward because they don't want to deal with the fine-tooth comb?
Yeah.
And that's going to be, dragged through every single ounce of their life?
Yes. I think it really keeps good people from running. And it's almost like the deck is stacked against us because that keeps good people from running, and the cost of running a campaign keeps good people from running. And I think that sends a terrible message because I think it sends a message that says you have to be a certain socioeconomic status in order to run for office, and that's crazy because you have to be able to represent your constituents, and so you have to be like your constituents, and so that's a bad message. And then, I mean, in the past 6 years, my skin's gotten a lot thicker, because I'm very sensitive. You could look at me cross-eyed and I'll want to cry. But it takes a lot more to get under my skin now, and a lot of people don't have the patience for that growth. Yeah. They're like, why would I want to do that to myself or my family?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, you see it. You see it in social media, that same tool that's being used to kind of just scrutinize and just, terrorize people, it also shows us like, wow, look at what these people have to go through. In some cases for 1857 a day. I want to talk for a minute about something, and I have to go there with you.
Okay.
And that's this whole the state of women today. Because I do look. I'm fortunate enough to be friends with some pretty incredible women. Some women that I honestly view that if I could just take some of those women and just put them in a room, they could like run the world, and it would be incredible. And you're on that list.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
I know she's oozing out of the chair again. But really incredible women, and I want to speak specifically to the women right now because I think that there's some interesting things happening with women today. I am fortunate enough to have a daughter on the way, as you know.
Yeah, lucky man.
Right, I'm so fortunate. I really am, and it's something that I'm totally looking forward to. But at the same time, like, wow, amazing stuff happening with women. Do you feel any extra responsibility, as a woman and a leader and someone that's here to be the pulse, of what's happening in your district? But is there any extra pressure now to be, even a little bit, I don't want to say better, but just a sharper, a more direct role model to young women out there? Because I think that it's needed.
Absolutely. Illinois is almost the exception to the rule because our legislature has more women than almost any other state, and I think it's about 30%. It should be higher than that. I work with men, I work with women, and I can tell you women know how to put their egos aside and just focus on the subject at hand and get something done. Men sometimes let their egos get in the way a little bit more than that. So it can be challenging. We are in a very unique time. We come from a community where men and women are equal. You could be the man in the house and, the wage earner, or you could be the woman. You could be the man and stay home, or you could be the woman and stay home. So this is not unusual for our communities. It's unusual in other communities to have the woman who might be, the breadwinner in the household, or the stronger leader in the household. With me raising two boys, I totally tried to raise them in a household of equality. I would like to say that I'm boss, so maybe the boys in my house, aren't quite as equal. But when I first went to Springfield, I experienced the good old boys club for the first time, and that has, in our communities, that's never happened to me here. And I didn't realize it was still going on. I knew the glass ceiling was still there. But, you go there in a position that you were just elected to this office, and now somebody's coming in and talking to you like, sweetie, honey, and not showing the respect that you really want to get a job done. And so that was a little challenging for me to overcome.
How did it make you feel? Because, I know that for myself and I say brown, some people say black, maybe you call me purple, I don't know what. I had somebody tell me that it's like, you're not black. I was like,
okay.
Okay, you know what I mean? So what am I? You tell me. But I know that glass ceiling, good old boys, people not giving you the respect you deserve just because of your gender or whatever. You know what I mean? It totally gets under my skin. How did it make you feel?
It empowered me. Because it was now up to me to show them that you can't treat me like that. And I am either your equal or I have a different position for you. My grandmother, who passed away probably about 10 years ago or so, was the nicest woman you've ever met. And there was one lesson that I learned from her from the time I grew up until, the day she died. And that was you treat everyone the same. You would treat the janitor the same way as you treat the president. We'd go out to dinner together, and by the time the meal was over, the waitress would be sitting at our table and feel like that they were part of our family, because she would just make sure that everybody was treated with love and respect. And so for me, when I, came into this position, that's how I treat people. That's how I expected people to treat me as well. And so it was a big wake-up call. But I think because of this wake-up call, you realize that, hey, we need to get more women in these positions, because we need to show not only our little world, but the whole world that this is a possibility. We had women who came before us who had many more challenges than we have now. We can't let them down, and we can't let our future generations down. And that's why when we talked in the beginning, a little bit in the beginning about IWIL, the Illinois Women's Institute for Leadership, it's a training program for women. Interesting, I have sons, you have sons. If you look in a classroom of young kids, and if a teacher asks a question, before the question's even over, that little boy's got his hand raised.
Right.
That little girl is waiting till she knows she has the answer in her head.
Right. So true.
So knowing that, and knowing the different, sort of makeup of a male versus a female, I feel like it is my responsibility to show young women that you can do this. It'll be a challenge, but you're up to that challenge, and you can accomplish this job.
And it's so true. I mean, and going off of that, I mean, what would you tell, like, indirectly to any women out there that are listening that might find themselves in a position? I mean, you went in there, the good old boys, people disrespecting you, and I know there are going to be women, unfortunately, that'll listen to this, that'll find themselves potentially in that same position at work or whatever. What would you say directly to those women right now that might be in that position where, and it just makes me mad thinking about it, but are being disrespected and in the workplace, not heard? What do you have to say to them? What should they do?
Keep your head held high, keep doing your job, and get hurt. Call people out. If somebody's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, you let them know. And it doesn't have to be with malice. Kill them with kindness. Get it done. I have a story that happened to me when I was first elected to office.
She's got like these crystal blue eyes, so you never know. I don't know where she's going with this one.
So, and this was a really interesting story. I was working on a piece of legislation, the legislation that we talked about earlier about the dental sedation.
Okay.
And, here's me so excited to be in my new job, and I've got this great bill idea, and I filed my legislation, and I'm sitting in my office one day, and my office is about the size of a box, and this man came in who I'd never met before, and he was a lobbyist for the insurance industry, stood over me while I was sitting in my chair, started yelling at me and pounding on my wall, saying, "You can't do this, it can't get done." And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that's all you have to tell me, that I can't do something. And of course, I'm going to, work to get it done. But I just looked at him and I said, well, maybe we can work together on this. P.S., it soon became the law.
Right.
But I think that the message here is don't let somebody intimidate you. If you are on the right track and you know that what you are doing is what you're supposed to be doing, don't let somebody try to intimidate you or throw you off. You just keep doing it and you call them out, because it's not you, it's them. You don't have to change your behavior. They have to change theirs.
Totally.
And it just needs to be pointed out to them.
Totally. One thing that I think about, as we're talking about this, back when I was younger, I'm not old. I mean,
not to me, you're not.
Right, with the beard, the beard off, I look a lot younger. But, when I was a young boy, growing up here in the North Shore, for many reasons, and I've talked about, I was bullied, blah, 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 but I didn't believe that my future had any value at that time. Or at least I couldn't see it. I couldn't tell you what value it had. Mm-hmm. So therefore, in the face of injustice, I felt like there really wasn't anything to fight for, because I didn't feel that my future had any value. And I think that for anyone out there right now who feels as though they are being held back, treated unfairly, marginalized, whatever's going on, your future has value.
Absolutely.
Our future as Americans and as people have value. And the second we start to recognize that and really believe that we are worth the time and the effort to be heard, actions can be augmented and changed. And I think that's so powerful. And I want to make sure that people understand that your future has value.
Absolutely. And you don't know what direction that is, but everybody has something special about them. And they have to make sure that they can let that shine. Yeah. You know, every little boy and little girl in a classroom can make such an impact sometime in their life. And we just have to let them have that opportunity to grow and know that there's that opportunity for them. They need to realize that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and at the same time, and this is, again, we touched on this in the beginning, but like, you can do all this while being authentic and true to who you are, you know? Because again, you know, Laura Cowan, I asked you.
And my dad is going to love the fact that you're saying my maiden name. Just saying.
Well, look, hey, I'm not taking anything away from Mr. Fine here. I'm just saying. But I mean, in the beginning when we were hanging out, I was like, so tell me, like, how is Laura Cowan different from Laura Fine? You're like, she's pretty much the same woman, the same person. You know, you can do all this and stay authentic. Mm-hmm, you know, you can get out there in the world and be impactful, but stay true to who you are. Did you at least feel pressure to conform and be something that you're not, you know, when you first took on this role as representative? Was there that pressure, or was it just like, hey, I can get out there and just be me?
I wouldn't say pressure to conform. When I first decided I was going to run for office, I started knocking on doors, which was something that was way outside of my comfort zone because I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert. And so I knew that the only way to get to know the people throughout my district was to meet them. So how do you best meet somebody? You knock on their door and you have a conversation. And that changed me, because I learned so much from so many different people that I think that really made me a better person by learning their stories and taking on what's going on in, you know, the suburbs that I represent. But everybody has that opportunity in life to grow, and by doing that, I grew. I didn't conform, but I changed because I was so much more knowledgeable about what other people's experiences were and what other people's concerns were. So I don't think nobody really, or I don't really conform very well to anything. You know, my husband and my children will tell you how stubborn I can actually be. But everything's a growth experience. And just like everything you do, you know, you started with one thing. Look how many other things that you've grown into.
Oh, totally.
And look at your experiences and how they formed who you are today.
Totally. I mean, you know, I'm here to collect experiences, not paper. And so I firmly believe that is a large part of why we are here, to collect those experiences. Going along with that, you know, it'd be foolish not to talk about your future plans. Because you've dedicated yourself to the people for how many years now?
6 years.
6 years, okay. But now you have some new goals. You want to join the Senate. Mm-hmm. So how does that change the impact that you believe you can have on the lives of the American people?
Well, the Senate district is twice as large as the House district. Mm-hmm. So I'd be representing, instead, right now I represent about 110,000. I'd be representing 220,000. For me, you know, as you know, quite a bit of my legislation has to do with insurance. And with many of the colleagues that I came in to the House with, who were not really interested in this topic before, are now very interested in it and support me and support my legislation. In the Senate, I really don't have that champion that my colleagues in the House are now of the issues that are important to me. So I feel like by moving over to the Senate, I'll really be able to have really a louder voice on the issues that I find important and that are important to our community.
That's awesome.
So hopefully everything will fall into place and work out. But in going back to what you said before, everybody can make a difference. And you just have to make sure your voice is heard and make sure that difference is made.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and I love what you said before, about, you don't have, growth can be change. I mean, you can change. You didn't lose who you were. You just changed, and that comes with experience and with taking things in and with listening to people. It's definitely okay to change. But, I'm just, like you said, you're not going to be forced into a box by anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's so important that people exercise that right. One thing, and this is totally off topic, but, I've heard about your cookies and you've talked about your cookies.
I've never brought you cookies?
But you never brought me cookies.
I owe you cookies.
Yeah, no,
you can put that on the record that I owe you cookies.
Well, now it's officially on the record.
Absolutely.
You owe me
I do
cookies.
make really good chocolate chip cookies.
And you keep talking about it, and I can
just made
taste
them
them
earlier in the week for my son.
Don't say that to me. Don't say that to me. I bring that up because do you think what we need to do here in kind of managing, let's say, local government and larger, is this more like baking where there's kind of an exact recipe? I mean, typically, with baking, you got to follow the recipe. Cooking, you can kind of get in the kitchen and throw a little bit of this and a little bit of that. What's it more like? Is it more like baking or is it more like cooking when it comes to what we need to do to get things right?
Oh, I think it's a little bit of both. You need the whole meal.
Ooh, you see, I knew you were going to go there. It just means more eating for me.
Exactly. You shouldn't have dessert before you have your dinner.
Right.
But I think, there need to be ground rules. People, to have civil disobedience, you need the civil. And that would be the exact recipe. But you also need to, experiment like you're doing with cooking and, get out of your comfort zone and try something new. And, what I find with people too is when they get involved and they'll go to their first rally or their first town hall meeting, it's almost addicting because you realize, hey, I've taken this step and I can make a difference. So now I'm going to take the next step because I know I can make a difference. And it's heartwarming for me to see so many people and so many women in our community who said that, I can't sit back because this is going to happen to my children and my family. And so now it's up to me to be the voice.
No, totally. Totally. You said and you mentioned we have an election, season coming up. Why should people get out there and vote? I mean, tell us why. Why is it important? Why should people, all those people that are like, I never vote, why do these people need to get out there and vote?
Because if they don't, then my voice will be heard and theirs will not. So, quite honestly, okay, I want my voice to be heard. But we are in a democracy. And every vote counts, and every opinion is important. I might not agree with you, but we should be able to disagree without being disagreeable. And I think that's the only way for our democracy to work, for everybody to participate and everybody to be a part of that conversation. I used to tell my students that, if you're upset about the outcome of an election and you didn't vote, that's your problem. You didn't participate, you had the choice. If you're upset about the outcome of an election and you did participate, we can sit down and talk, cry together, have a cup of coffee.
Right.
Because you made that effort and you have a stake in this game.
You asked me earlier about how I felt after the first time I voted. For all those first-time voters that are going to vote this election season for the first time, how would you want them to feel? What do you hope that they feel?
Empowered. This is their future. They need to kind of take the bull by the horns and say, my voice was heard. It's funny because after you vote, you get that I voted sticker. Wear it with pride And most people do. Most people who participate in the process are proud to say that I did my part. I did my civic duty. I mean, we passed a piece of legislation a couple of years ago that says civics needs to be taught in the high schools because kids need to know why it's important to participate and how to participate. We also passed a bill a couple of years ago that says if you're 17 years old now, but you're going to be 18 at the time of the general election, you can vote in a primary because you're going to have to figure out who are the candidates going to be in the general election,
how cool is
and you
that?
should be a part of that.
That's cool.
And our kids are far more educated on the candidates than most people realize. Many of the schools do an outstanding job of really bringing awareness to what's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, I've always said that I believe that real change really does start from the bottom and then work its way up. You know, I think there's so much that can be done on Main Street. You know, so much that can be done. You know, in speaking to, you know, kind of just people on Main Street, you know, the business owners, people that are just pessimistic, you know, that feel like they're not being heard. Yes, we want them to go out there and get involved, but do you have any messages for those people in these small towns, you know, right here on Main Street? You know, what would you say to them?
Do it. Get involved. Make sure you're heard. Participate. Everybody has that opportunity to participate. That's why we live here. That's what we love about this country, because we have those rights. We have our freedom of speech. Use them.
I love it. Laura, you're amazing.
No, Chris, you're amazing.
I really hope you follow through on your promise with these cookies.
I will have to because it's on tape now.
It is on tape. My stomach is grumbling just talking about them. Laura, thank you so much for joining me here in the pod.
Chris.
You are
Wonderful.
You know, you are exactly the type of human being, you know, that I'm happy is in a position to go out there and represent our concerns, you know, and be the voice of the people.
Thank you. I'll make you the cookies anyway. You don't have to say
I
the
know
nice
I'm going to
things.
butter you up, but I really do wish you all the luck. So thank you so much. You know, like Laura said, I mean, growth is a part of life. But let's make sure that these are changes that we want to make, not changes that are being made because somebody else is putting you in a box and trying to limit the decisions and the opportunity and the potential that you have. I do believe that change starts right here on Main Street. For all of you young people out there that have hit the pavement, keep doing what you're doing. I am inspired by you, and your voice is being heard by the older generations. Don't stop. Keep rebelling against what you believe is an injustice. Keep stepping forward for those that you think are marginalized and aren't being heard, you know, that don't have a voice. Advocate for those that don't have the power and the strength to do it for themselves. It's important because guess what? Our future as Americans does have value and it's worth standing up for. So get out there and continue to fight. I want to thank all the people here at Media Pods. I want to thank Audio Andy for always doing a wonderful job. I want to thank Laura Fine for being incredible and for coming in here and sharing her knowledge. I want to thank all the people at MediaPods. Again, go to MediaPods.com. Also go to therebelmindset.com. We are now on iTunes. We are on Spotify. So there's a million ways for you to hear us. And don't forget to go to Amazon.com and get yourself a Rebel Mindset t-shirt. I'm wearing one right now. This is
Cool t-shirt.
You like it?
I do.
I'm going to send you one.
I'll trade you for some cookies.
There you go. It comes in women's cut and I think maybe kids too. So until next time, I think the next time I'm in the pod here, I'm going to have James Levin again, former LinkedIn exec, go digging deeper into sales. So that's going to be awesome. But until then, rebel on.